right, now we have Drayton Nabers, class of 62. Drayton and Ken were roommates, by the way, when they were here 50 years ago. Praise the Lord.
A few on there too.
Oh, really? Great. All right, Drayton joined Protective Life Corporation in 1979 and rose to the position of chairman and CEO before retiring in 2002. He was then appointed finance director for the state of Alabama. In June of 2004, Drayton was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Alabama. At Princeton, he was the captain of the tennis team, and he also clerked for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black after graduating from Yale Law School in 1965. In addition to sitting on several corporate boards, he is currently chairman of Cornerstone Schools of Alabama, an inner-city faith-based private school. Drayton is a member of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Mountain Brook, Alabama, and serves as an adjunct instructor at Beeson Divinity School. Thank you, Drayton.
Well, thank you, Matt, and what a privilege it is to be with you this morning on this panel. I don't like following Catherine and Ken. Ken and I did groom in the second year at Lockhart. 3 years with each other. He was more handsome than I was. He was more buff than I was. He was faster than I was. And little did I know I was going to have to follow him on the panel. 3 years later, in a way, Ken and my life followed similar patterns. It was in 1977, rather than in the early 80s, that I finally began to understand what Christian faith is all about. I majored in religion at Princeton, and that was the time in which Princeton taught a much more orthodox form of Christianity and the religion department than is the case today. But when I entered the business world, essentially for me, Christian faith was adhering loosely to the basic principles taught in the Bible, the golden rule, being kind, considerate, and fair. And it was in 1977 that something that we would call a conversion experience, at least down south we call it conversion. I don't know what they up north occurred, and I began to realize that what I thought was Christian faith was not that at all. And really, I spent the last 30 years of my life since then trying to get it straight. The first thing I understood is that I had to decide what the final authority of the truth was going to be. At Princeton, and I assume this is true of so many of us who graduate from schools such as Princeton, we've got enormous confidence in our minds and our own intellect. And it became clear to me that the final source of authority, the final court of appeals, if we are lawyers, has to be the Bible. And that was difficult for me, but I just, as a matter of will, determined that would be true. That my faith would begin with believing in the Bible. That was an act of will, I hope an act of will that was fortified by God's grace. Then the second question with respect to faith, which I had not understood before, is where's my trust going to be? Who am I going to trust? Again, graduating from Princeton, we have a lot to trust in ourselves. Living in the United States, as wealthy as we are, it's easy to trust in wealth. But it was clear to me from reading the Bible that my trust had to be in Jesus Christ, that He had to be the Lord of all that I was doing. I was particularly taken by the verse in Colossians chapter 3. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord and not for men. It is Jesus Christ you're serving. And so I had, and this was not easy, by the way. I mean, it's taken years and years for me to live more fully into this. I had to trust Jesus Christ for results. And He was going to be the source of whatever results, successful or not, I was to have through the trust that I had in Him. And all of this could only be accomplished, I determined, with a much more complete prayer life than I'd ever had before. So So I began each day at least 15 to 20 minutes of prayer, 15 to 20 minutes of reading the Bible. Of course, I had to understand the Bible because it was going to be the source of authority. And it has been so much fun over the last 30 years to seek to understand exactly how the Bible relates to the world's work and how we incorporate the two, as Ken has so successfully in his career. And then finally, in terms of the faith that we bring to our work, I had to understand and live into Jesus Christ being the source of the life of my soul. If we think of the soul as our faculties of intellect and will and affections or emotions, those, insofar as they were mine, had to be subordinated to Jesus Christ living in my heart, so I thought as he thought, and I will to do those things that he has purposed for my life, and that my affections and my desires were his and not mine. And so it is those three dimensions of life. What is the final four of appeals in terms of truth? Who am I going to trust? And where is the source of my life and action going to be? Is Jesus Christ abiding in me in such a way that it's he that is doing these things rather than I? Is something that I've tried to live into more fully in my life. I love doing it, by the way. I guess if we go to Princeton, we're a little more intellectual than perhaps others. By the way, as I say, that is often an obstacle rather than a benefit of an education. So I try to think these things out. I've written a couple of books. I wrote the books more for my own benefit than for anybody else. Those were really good sleeping medicine I found for most. And so that is the sort of faith that I have sought to have more fully by God's grace in the workplace and really in all that I do. I think the question that we're supposed to respond to this morning is what are we doing today? I haven't talked about anything that I'm doing today. I'm an old man and there's not a lot for me to do. I am chairman of a wonderful inner city private school in Birmingham. I don't think there's any doubt that except for one or two private schools for rich kids, it provides 300 African Americans with the best elementary education which is available in the state of Alabama, certainly in Birmingham. That's a great source of joy to me. I've been fortunate enough to be introduced to two ministries in Africa, one in Rwanda, one in Uganda. The American dollar is so far in Africa compared to the United States. We can build a church in Rwanda, literally a church, that will seat 400 people for $27,000. A school in Uganda that will give an education to 800 kids for very little money. So I've loved doing that work. I'm about to go over there in a couple of weeks to finish that. And I work here with Christian Union, and that is the source. What Christian Union is doing, I wish it had been doing when I was here, because my understanding of what is true faith could have begun while I was an undergraduate at Princeton, Lord willing. I mean, it's only through His grace that we've grown into this appreciation. We can't do it on our own. We've got to do it through His love and His grace. But we didn't have a Christian Union. We didn't have a Princeton Faith in Action then, and I'm so glad that we do now. And I wish those of you that are not acquainted with this ministry will learn more about it, because of what is being done on the Princeton campus and throughout the Ivy League. I consider something that is best thought of as a miracle, and just so far beyond what was being done in terms of faith in action. That when I was an undergraduate, even though Princeton was more probably in terms of its at least outward profession, a Christian university, more of a Christian university then. I want to leave you with 3 or 4 verses that have been very instrumental to me as I sought to live my faith in the workplace, as Ken so successfully does, and Catherine so successfully does in her life. And the first one is, I try to pray these every day, is in 2 Corinthians 9, verse 8, is, may all grace abound to us, so that in all things, at all times, having all that we need, we will abound in every good work. If we're going to do good things day by day, it's going to be by God's grace. And then there's a verse in 1 Peter in chapter 4, and that is, use whatever gifts you have received to serve others. Faithfully administering God's grace in His various forms. Then, if anyone speaks, they should speak as using the very words of God. I prayed that before I spoke this morning. I mean, like about 10 times up here. I listened to Catherine. And if anyone serves, he should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God be praised. Then the last paragraph of Hebrews has this language in it. Equip us with everything good for the doing of your will and work in us what is pleasing to you. And then especially for someone age 71, and that is, may we be counted, this is in 2 Thessalonians, may we be counted worthy of your calling. And dear God, by your grace, fulfill every good purpose of ours and every act from our faith to the glory of Jesus. So I try to pray these verses every morning, that the faith that God has given me in His grace will endure to His